while watching my husband curse with an expression of unprecedented ugliness. I realized that my aunt's worries had come true. Despite thinking we were fine, my husband had changed due to money. Seeing him like that, I thought I could no longer continue our marriage. My name is Jennifer. I'm a typical housewife in my 40s. I had been married to Paul for 16 years, with 2 daughters, Hillary, 14, and Mia, 12, leading a normal, happy, and peaceful life. Everything changed for me right after a month after my mother's death. My father had passed away last year, and my mother had been living alone in her house, an hour away by train from ours. My parents were very close, so after my father's death, my mother lost her spirits. After a month following my father's passing, she fell ill. When tested at the hospital, they found a disease, and she quickly joined my father. Losing both parents in succession, I was deeply shocked. Still unable to sort out my feelings, I received a call from my aunt after finishing my mother's funeral. She said I was the beneficiary of my mother's life insurance and needed to proceed with the claim. My aunt works at an insurance company. When she was a young agent, she had my parents sign up for the insurance to meet her sales quota. I knew about the life insurance when my father died and my mother changed the beneficiary. However, I had completely forgotten about it with my mother's illness. The amount was $500,000. I was shaken by suddenly having such a large sum, but my husband was overjoyed. $500,000, right? Amazing. Yes, I'm surprised too. I was more bewildered, but my husband seemed happy. I watched him with mixed feelings. We must use the money your mother left behind. Yes, but she just passed away. I can't think of spending it right away. I understand. We'll wait until you feel better. Realizing our emotional gap, my husband looked uncomfortable. After that, he stopped mentioning the insurance money, and I felt relieved inside. However, something unexpected happened. When settling my mother's estate, it was discovered that she had over $500,000 in savings. Contacting my aunt, who might know the situation, she said, "That $500,000 is probably from your father's life insurance. Both my parents had the same life insurance. When my father died, my mother received $500,000 but didn't spend it, leaving the full amount." My aunt, who has always worked at the insurance company, worried about me. She had seen families fight over inheritance and life-changing incidents due to sudden wealth. She advised me to carefully consider whom to tell about the inheritance. Hearing her words, I felt a bit more composed. $1 million is a lot, but I resolved to ensure it wouldn't disrupt our lives. I decided to discuss it with my husband. I was anxious about his previous behavior, but he listened calmly. Relieved by his attitude, I soon noticed his behavior becoming strange. Maybe I should quit my job. What? What are you saying? Well, it's $1 million. We can live without working, right? To me, his words were nonsensical. Indeed, $1 million is a substantial amount. However, it's not enough for us, in our 30s with 2 daughters, to live without working for the rest of our lives. Seeing my reaction, my husband said it was just a joke and didn't quit his job. However, even after that, Paul started suggesting things like, "Let's move to a bigger house," or "Let's buy a new car." Suddenly, he asked our 6th grade daughter, "Don't you want to try for middle school entrance exams?" Our daughter, who had never heard such things before, was bewildered. When I was thinking of talking to my husband about this, he went and bought a brand-name wallet for our 14-year-old daughter. This wallet, popular among high school students and introduced by an influencer, cost $500. Our daughter wanted it, but both Paul and I had said no. She didn't expect to get it and had said, "I was just saying." But then, Paul bought it. Our daughter seemed more bewildered than happy, sending me a questioning glance, "Is this okay?" Seeing Paul getting carried away after getting $1 million, I decided it was time for a serious talk. Stop suddenly talking about middle school exams for Mia or buying unnecessary things. Why not? I was thinking of Mia. And the wallet isn't unnecessary, Hillary wanted it, right? And the car and the house aren't unnecessary either. Mia will only be confused if you spring middle school exams on her in 6th grade. She's planning to join the wind orchestra with her friends. And Hillary doesn't need a $500 wallet, and we just replaced the car 2 years ago. Our current house is fine as it is. Paul wanted to use the money now that we had it. He seemed to want to upgrade our lifestyle. The property listings he brought for moving were all over $10,000 in rent. We didn't suddenly start earning $1 million a year, it was just a windfall. If we followed Paul's ideas, our money would be gone in no time. I was determined not to let our children get the wrong idea. And not to change our current standard of living. But Paul didn't understand my feelings at all. We have $1 million, a little spending won't hurt. I'd agree to spend on a new car after 10 years or if our daughter wanted to take entrance exams. But this is different. If we spend without planning, $1 million will disappear in no time. $1 million won't just disappear. Jennifer, you're exaggerating. I was utterly frustrated by my husband's naive comments. While I'm often told I'm too serious, Paul's optimism, usually charming, was too much this time. You brought home listings for places that cost $10,000 in rent, right? That's $120,000 a year. In 8 years, there goes the $1 million. Then what do we do with the $1 million? Just let it sit? It's not about not using it. It's precious money left by Mom and Dad. And I want to use it carefully. I told Paul the first would use the money for our family and consult him before any decision. But I didn't want to think about it anymore right now. Paul seemed to agree and didn't say more. However, about a week after our discussion, he started asking, "Have you decided how to use the money? What will you use it for?" I felt sad that Paul didn't understand me at all. It's only been a week since we talked. I can't decide so quickly. Then how long should I wait? Jennifer, you're being too cautious. Not too cautious, I just don't want to disrupt our lives with sudden wealth. When Paul realized I didn't plan to spend, he seemed dissatisfied. He kept nagging, "Are you really not going to use it? What about investing?" I was stressed by his attitude and responded nonchalantly. But Paul, perhaps unhappy with my casual responses, barely spoke to me anymore. If I knew it would come to this, I would have preferred not to have the inheritance. I even thought of donating it. Then one day, Paul came home in high spirits. When he said he had something to tell me, he dropped a bombshell. "I bought a house for us to live with your father and sister. We'll move when it's ready." What are you talking about? A house to live with my father and sister-in-law? I haven't heard anything about this. That's why I'm telling you now. Paul spoke as if it was nothing, but I was filled with disbelief. That money is legally mine, not his. I never intended to use it just for myself, but it's unforgivable for Paul to use it without my consent. Moreover, I had asked Paul to keep my inheritance a secret from his parents, whom I find difficult to deal with. They have said things to me like, "You're not a complete mother unless you have a son." Or called my mother, who passed away shortly after my father, a woman who could only depend on a man. I find such comments intolerable. Paul should know this well. His sister, who has always lived at home and follows idols, doesn't do housework and doesn't contribute financially. Living with such in-laws and a sister-in-law would obviously be hard. And I don't think it would be a good influence on our daughter. I hurriedly went to check the bank book for the inheritance account. But the bank book that should have been there was gone. My blood ran cold. Paul had really used the money without my consent. Returning to Paul, he was laughing. At that moment, I felt an indescribable fear. After 14 years of marriage, he seemed like a stranger. "Jennifer, you always said you wanted to use it for the family meaningfully. Living with my parents would mean more people to help with the kids. And if we pay for the house up front, we won't have to worry about rent in the future. It's a good use of money for me, you, and the kids, right? If you think it's a good use, why didn't you consult me beforehand? Why did you take the bank book without asking? Don't make it sound like I took it without permission. What's yours is mine, right? Hearing his words, I felt my love for Paul cooling. I realized he would never understand. Stop it. That's my money from the inheritance. You had no right to use it without asking. So, that's your true feelings. I was right to take the bank book. You never intended to let me use the money, did you? You planned to keep it all for yourself. Paul yelled at me with a fury I had never seen before. I wondered how things had come to this, but at that moment, I was sure I could no longer be with him. If you oppose living with my parents, it's divorce. Fine, divorce it is. Paul probably intended to threaten me, not expecting me to agree so readily. He seemed shaken by my agreement. Really? You're okay with divorce? Yes, I am. If we divorce, you won't be able to live in the house we're building. Are you okay with that? I didn't want to live in a 3-generation house with his parents and sister. So this was no problem for me. Besides, a question had arisen in my mind. Paul claimed he had bought a house, but I suspected that was a lie. Are you sure you're okay with this? I think you'll regret it. Regret? That's impossible, Paul said confidently. Then, declaring he couldn't live with me anymore, he packed his things and left the house. The next morning, I went to the bank first thing and found that the money was still there in full. As I suspected, Paul's claim about buying the house was a lie. Even though he had the bank book, he couldn't withdraw such a large sum from my account without my consent. I reported the loss of the bank book, requesting a temporary suspension of the account, reissuance of the bank book, and keeping the details to myself. Afterwards, I proceeded with the divorce, discussing property division and child support. There were no major disputes, and things were going smoothly. However, a week after Paul left, he called me, sounding desperate. I answered, expecting it to be about the divorce, but he was asking for my help. Jennifer. Help me. What? What's going on all of a sudden? Help me, please. Paul seemed panicked, only repeating, help me, without explaining the situation. As I was baffled, someone else came on the line. According to the man on the phone, a man with my suspended account's bank book tried to withdraw money, and the bank, finding it suspicious, especially as he had a power of attorney, contacted the police. As a result, Paul was being questioned by the police inside the bank. I never imagined Paul would do such a thing. And even though we were planning to divorce, I was shocked. The husband I knew would never do such a thing, but he was driven mad by the money. I was told that they wanted to hear my side of the story, so I decided to head there immediately. I contacted my brother-in-law at that moment. He's a brilliant lawyer. Paul has always had a strong complex towards him, getting upset even when I just talk to my brother-in-law. He barely interacts with his family, as their personalities clash, even though they live nearby. I was sure my brother-in-law wasn't involved in this 3-family house plan, and, despite feeling bad for bothering him, he was the only one I could turn to. He answered the phone right away. Jennifer? It's been a while. What's up? Sorry to bother you suddenly, brother-in-law. I'm in a real bind. After I briefly explained everything, he believed it all, surprised, and said he would come to the bank immediately. I'm really sorry about my family, Jennifer. No, I'm the one who's sorry for the sudden call. Don't worry. I'm glad you contacted me. At the bank, surrounded by the bank staff who had suspended the account and the police, Paul looked diminished. Seeing me, he seemed relieved and tearfully clung to me. Jennifer. Help me. I'll be arrested if things stay like this. Tell them we agreed to withdraw the money as husband and wife. Paul was pleading in a pathetic voice. The bank book was taken without my permission, the account's contents weren't his to claim. And I didn't remember writing any power of attorney. A power of attorney should require a registered signature. Asking the bank staff. I found out the power of attorney had an unregistered signature, not the registered one. I laughed at the poorly forged document. If I explained the truth, Paul would surely be arrested. A police officer asked, "Are you this man's wife?" I wanted to say no, but unfortunately, we were still married. Taken to another room to explain, I detailed everything. I felt guilty for the trouble, but received sympathy from the police and bank staff. Paul could be charged with forgery for the power of attorney. Thinking of my daughters, I decided not to file a complaint. Just as I finished talking and was heading back to Paul, I heard him yelling, "Why is he here?" Rushing to Paul, he was shouting at me. "Jennifer. Did you call him? Why bring this guy? Are you harassing me?" "You're the one harassing. Taking the bank book without permission. Trying to withdraw money, it's not acceptable, even if she's your wife. Shut up. It's none of your business." Paul was so agitated that the police had to intervene, but he didn't calm down. "You were having an affair with him, weren't you? Planning to use the inheritance together? That's ridiculous. I don't believe it." I was deceived. Despite my denial, Paul didn't believe me. My brother-in-law has a beloved wife of 20 years, Paul should know he wouldn't have an affair. "Officer. I'm the victim here. I've been tricked. Enough. You could be handed over to the police for what you've done. And instead of apologizing, you're shifting the blame." Paul quieted down, either from being yelled at by my brother-in-law or the fear of police action. I handed Paul the divorce papers, which I had planned to give him after discussing child support. "Please don't involve me or our daughters ever again. I don't want to be involved in whatever you do from now on, and I hate being called as your wife." Realizing he was being looked at coldly by everyone, Paul quietly signed the divorce papers. My brother-in-law then said he would take Paul home, taking responsibility for him. I submitted the divorce papers to the city hall, finalizing our divorce. Later, Paul's debts came to light. He had been splurging at strip clubs, boasting, "I have a $1 million. And spending tens of thousands in a day. He borrowed money, intending to repay it with the inheritance. But without the inheritance, only the debts remained. His parents were furious, thinking they would live in a luxury house worth $1 million. And scolded him as useless. His parents tried to contact me, but my brother-in-law stopped them. I moved and started a new life with my daughters. My daughters, sensing their father's odd behavior, don't want to see him. Paul, berated by his parents, advised by my brother-in-law, finally regained his senses. And now pays child support regularly. I hope, if my daughters ever say, "I want to see Dad," I can let them meet him.